Welcome to the special edition of the Tea. We have Rodriguez Murray with us from the UNCF, and we're in that moment where things aren't normal. And we want to go back to normality. And that's one of the reasons why we're talking to the UNCF, the United Negro College Fund, because we are seeing, after the unfortunate deadly shooting of Charlie Kirk at a university in Utah, the day after, several HBCUs have received credible threats, and this is not the first time. So, Rodriguez, could you please tell me what the stance is of the United Negro College Fund?
The stance of UNCF, Ms. Ryan, and by the way, thank you for having us on today to
Thank you.
talk about this important issue. The
Thank you
stance
for
of,
thank you for
of
agreeing.
course, the stance of UNCF is that this should not take place in America today, and something has to be done to stop it. Since January 1st of 2022, before today's threats, there were 75 plus threats to HBCUs across the country, impacting 51 of our nation's 101 historically Black colleges, universities, and impacting or taking away 77 days of instruction from our HBCU students and untold amounts of mental angst imposed upon our students, faculty, and staff. Today, 9 historically Black colleges and universities were impacted by either bomb or gun threats. These terroristic threats are terrible. They shouldn't happen in America today, and something has to be done, whether it is the FBI bringing these perpetrators to bear or Congress providing more money to make sure that HBCUs are more prepared to handle these threats. Because I must tell you, Ms. Ryan, we're doing the same thing in September of 2025 that we were doing on January 1st of 2022.
So here's the problem I see for HBCUs in this moment. HBCUs are community oriented schools, and there's nothing wrong with that. I am a proud graduate of an HBCU. I love my HBCU because just of that, it is a community school. We bring in the community, we were built around community. But now we're trying to find how to secure us from the community. How does that work?
Well, what we're looking for are ways to make sure that HBCUs, the institutions, the culture, and the students are all so very secure. And one way we've decided to pursue it is by going after funding, because there's only one real pot of money in the entire federal enterprise. It's found in the Department of Homeland Security, and it is at FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. FEMA has a pot of money for nonprofits to secure them. And HBCUs have been after that funding for years and years, Ms. Ryan. And unfortunately, HBCUs have a very poor track record in achieving that funding. And so that has led to us at UNCF calling for members of Congress for 3 successive years, unsuccessfully so far, calling for members of Congress to set aside funding within that program, specifically for HBCUs, because we're the only type of higher education institutions that are receiving these kinds of threats at this clip. And so we believe that that justifies the funding for HBCUs. And we believe that Congress, before they pass their final fiscal year 26 appropriations bills, which could be before the end of the month, or it could be a few months from now, they have the time to add that funding in for HBCUs. And today's events prove that HBCUs deserve this funding and is very much warranted.
Do you know how many HBCUs are actually closed in? Because I can think of several that are cityscape. I can think of some that are community, spread out through the community and open. And I don't know of any that actually have closed gates. Do you?
I can only think of one,
Okay.
and it may be an all-female institution
Okay.
that has closed-in gates like that. But really, I must tell you, other than that one institution, I'm struggling to find any other. And so I understand the concept that we're dealing with in terms of being community institutions, being open to the community, being trusted by the community,
Mhm.
and yet having the need to insulate ourselves to a degree that we and the students feel safe. I think there's a happy medium that can be established with surveillance and with security these days, but HBCUs need the additional funding to meet this moment. You know, our enrollment is up. More
Yeah,
students are looking at us than ever before, and
yeah.
this has a chance to derail that positive momentum. And we want to prevent that by getting the funding necessary from Congress.
But it's not just Black students. White students are finding HBCUs, particularly some of the ones that are ranked at the top, as affordable options to Harvard, to Yale, to some of these other schools. So let's be clear, HBCUs are historically Black colleges and universities, but they have such a stellar program that many of our white mainstream people from all walks of life receive master's degrees and undergraduate degrees and doctorate degrees from many of these institutions. I have been at many commencements and seen people getting engineering degrees, doctorate engineering degrees from some of these institutions. R1 institution. I mean, there's a gambit of excellence in education at HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. Has the UNCF talked to any of these presidents today about the need
Absolutely.
for security? Can you tell me what the conversations have been?
We've talked to them about what the threats were, how the threats came in, how the institutions have been dealing with local and federal law enforcement. We've been there with wraparound services to help all of our presidents. We've even reached out to some of the HBCUs that are not properly in the UNCF network, but they're HBCUs and we're a HBCU support organization. So, of course, we've reached out to them. And we've been doing the same thing for the last 3 years, Ms. Ryan. But I have to tell you, that these institutions need more of those resources to make sure that they can provide security. And we need more transparency from law enforcement, especially the FBI, because they haven't always been forthcoming with the information. They have not always briefed us to make sure that we understand what the threats really are and who's perpetrating the threats. And even our friends in Congress have struggled to get the proper type of briefing. And so, what we're continuing to do is call for the transparency and the funding to make sure that we can help understand the narrative and combat it as best we can.
So if you were talking about you were having struggling before with Congress and the FBI, I see where we are today. And I'm going to be optimistic because this president has at least left HBCUs alone right now. So I want to be optimistic. But I want to, before I close this, the NAACP, on the day that all of these threats happened, they said, they've been working all day discussing how to respond. And they said the first response is to act with caution, report threats, and respond to the decisions of campus administrators. But you also need help from the federal government. At the end of the day, if you can surmise, give us a synopsis of a synopsis, what this moment is for the UNCF and the greater community of HBCUs and even other minority serving schools. It's not just about the HBCUs as well, because there are other minority serving schools that are focused predominantly on students of those races and cultures.
Well, you're right, and I do want to give a summary, but I do want to just make sure everyone knows that even though that there are other types of institutions focused on minority students, HBCUs are really the only ones getting these kinds of threats. And so, in large part, though we may have institutions that claim to be much like us, it's really only us that are going through this at the moment, which makes this a heavier burden to bear. It makes me think about my fellow Morehouse alumnus, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., when he said that a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so the threat to one HBCU or nine is a threat to all 101. And I'll take it even further. When you threaten HBCUs, you threaten African Americans everywhere. All across this country, because we all have this kindred spirit with these institutions. And so we all take this very seriously. This hits and it impacts in a very personal way. This is more than a job for us at UNCF. This is a calling to make sure that these institutions stay whole and that these students get every opportunity and aspect for higher education that all of us who went before them were able to receive. And so we want the best for these students, we want the best for these institutions, and we want the best for all of us as people because no matter what our race is, We all want to feel safe and secure as we learn, especially in the most formative years of our life. And so we want to make sure that these threats to HBCUs are taken seriously by all of our federal partners and that we as HBCUs get the resources it takes to make sure that they don't happen anymore and that the perpetrators are dealt with and we all know about it.
You said something so poignant, Rodriguez. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was an HBCU student, Morehouse. Kamala Harris, the former vice president of the United States, an HBCU student, Howard University. James Clyburn, Congressman James Clyburn, South Carolina State, correct?
Indeed.
April Ryan, Morgan State.
Senator Raphael Warnock, Morehouse College.
Morehouse.
And the list goes on and on.
I'm glad you added that. Yes. Morehouse, one of our preeminent HBCUs, along with Spelman, Clark, Morehouse, are all in that
Atlanta University Center.
In the university.
It's a consortium.
The consortium of schools. And I understand that Clark got a threat, and they locked the students down, and then it created a ripple effect for Morehouse and Spelman. Guys,
absolutely.
This is how it's going. I talked to a teacher at Clark Atlanta and said, she took her students into her office instead of locking down into the classroom. Guys, this is real. This is real. We had a deadly shooting at a university of Charlie Kirk, and then the next day, threats, credible threats. Rodriguez Murray, thank you from the UNCF. This is serious. And for all the HBCU community, parents, former grads, etc., just the community at large, this is real. This is real. Caution is needed. Be careful. Thank you for your work, and I look forward to talking to you further about what's happening with the protection of HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities in this nation. As you said, it's happening only to HBCUs, not any other minority-serving institutions. I'm emotional because I'm an HBCUer and I'm an American. Rodriguez Murray, thank you from the UNCF. This is April Ryan signing out with the T.